When did the Romans come to Dacia? When did the Romans leave Dacia? When did Dacia become part of the Roman Empire? The Internet abounds in answers to these inquiries, and the prevailing opinion is that the Romans came to Dacia in 106 AD and withdrew from the region during the years 271 to 73 AD, referred to as the Aurelian Retreat. What do they actually mean, those who ask when the Romans came to Dacia? There are those who question the specific time when the Romans initially arrived in Dacia as individuals with a distinct identity, while others ponder the moment when the Romans first arrived in Dacia as carriers of political, cultural, or other influences, as representatives of the Roman Empire. Determining the exact arrival of the first Romans in Dacia as individuals remains uncertain. The relationships between the populations and tribes of Pannonia, modern-day Hungary, or Noricum, modern-day Austria, and the Romans and Dacians are deeply rooted, dating back to at least the beginning of the 3rd century BC in institutional forms. This pushes the initial contact even further back, but a definitive date is still elusive. By the 1st century BC, the Roman influence in Dacia had become highly significant. Greek coins, which were used and imitated by the Dacians, were largely replaced by Roman coins, which were also used and imitated by the Dacians. In fact, the Dacians were skilled at copying Roman coins to such an extent that until the relatively recent discovery of Dacian molds for Roman denarii, silver coins, it was commonly believed that the so-called Dacian Roman denarii were actually Roman coins. Undoubtedly, the use and replication of the Roman denarius serve as a prominent example, showcasing the immense scale of the phenomenon. Nevertheless, Roman influence permeates numerous aspects, spanning from metallurgy to the connections forged between Dacian and Roman nobles, even extending to Rome itself. However, once again, a definitive date eludes us in this context. The precise arrival of the first Romans as individuals in the area between the Danube, spanning from Pannonia to the Black Sea, remains unknown. Similarly, the exact timing of the arrival of the first traders and the establishment of early economic, military, and cultural connections remains elusive. It is certain, however, that these events occurred prior to 100 BC, although an exact date cannot be determined. Thus, at the beginning of the 1st century AD, between 10 and 30 AD, the Romans assumed control of the southern part of Bessarabia, located between the Prut and Dniester rivers. This region was used by various tribes, including the Scythians, Getae, for raiding and plundering in the southern Danube territories. In response, the Romans constructed a defensive barrier between the Prut and Dniester rivers, an admirable fortification that marked the beginning of Roman administration north of the Danube. During this specific time frame, the Iazyges Mentanaste, who controlled the lands between the Middle Danube and the Carpathian Mountains, also entered into a federative relationship with the Romans. Spreading from present-day Hungary all the way to the foothills of the Apusene and Banat regions of the Carpathians, the Iazyges Mentanaste found themselves caught between two powers, the Romans and the Dacians. Opting for an alliance with the Romans, they became a client kingdom within the framework of the provinces and states that formed the confederation known today as the Roman Empire. Consequently, they received engineering expertise and financial support to build fortifications along the frontier. Across the bend of the Danube towards present-day Slovakia to the vicinity of Moldova Veche, a series of 4 defensive lines can be found. This marks the second instance of Roman administrative presence north of the Danube, albeit somewhat less direct than the first. Therefore, Roman rule in Dacia, between the Tisa and the Dniester rivers, began in the early decades of the 1st century AD. Between the Tisa, Danube and Dniester rivers in the 1st century AD, moving from west to east, we find the kingdom of Iazyges Mentanaste, a Roman client state, encompassing the flatlands, hilly areas, and foothills of present-day Crișana and Banat. The kingdom of Dacia, which became an ally of Rome between 50 and 70 AD, later turned into a Roman client state. It encompassed Transylvania, eastern Banat, Oltenia, and northern Muntenia in present-day territory. The territory of the Costoboci, possibly a kingdom or a confederation of tribes or another form of political entity, included Maramureș, Pocuția, the northern part of present-day Bucovina, and potentially other northern regions. However, the exact northern boundary of this area is not precisely defined. The land of the Carpi, whether tribe, kingdom, or confederation of tribes, was located in northern Moldova between the Costoboci and the Bastarni. The Carpiani, located south of the Carpi, are not recorded as an independent power. It is plausible that they were assimilated by the Carpi and or Bastarni, or they may have been among the Getae who migrated through the southern Danube and became Romans in the early 4th century AD. The Bastarni, a tribe, kingdom, or confederation of tribes, resided in southern Moldova between the territory of the Carpi, Roxolan, the Roman territory in Bessarabia, and it seems the Dniester River. The Roxolan, a tribe, kingdom, or confederation of tribes, were located in southwestern Moldova, as well as the eastern and southeastern regions of Muntenia. Out of these 6 main states, 2 became part of the Roman system as client kingdoms in the 1st century AD. The first was the kingdom of Iazyges Mentanaste, followed by the kingdom of Dacia. The latter was recognized as an ally of the Roman Empire by the 60s of this century, although Tacitus mentions that the Dacians still carried out plundering raids such as the one in 69 AD. According to Jordanes, during the reign of Duras, 68-87 AD, the successor of Scorilo on the throne of the kingdom of Dacia, there was an established alliance between this Dacian state and the Roman emperors. The use of the plural form implies that this alliance could have been in place as early as the reign of Claudius, 41-54 AD, if not earlier. This is the period when around 100,000 Transdanubian men from the present-day Romanian plain and southern Moldova were granted permission to cross the Danube and settle in the Roman Empire, along with their families. As a result, it can be said that the Roman occupation of Dacia began in the first half of the 1st century AD. However, when did the Roman withdrawal from Dacia occur? In answering this question, the so-called Aurelian withdrawal is frequently mentioned with great conviction, suggesting that it occurred between 271 and 273 AD. But what was the Aurelian withdrawal in fact? In 269, Emperor Marcus Aurelius Claudius achieved a brilliant victory against the largest Gothic alliance that had launched an attack on the Roman Empire. This victory earned him the nickname Claudius II Gothicus and was accomplished at Naissus, present-day Nice, in Serbia. During the year 270, Emperor Aurelian crushed the Goths who had allied with the Iazygids for a new plundering campaign in Romania. In 271, Emperor Aurelian delivered a devastating blow to the Goths in Moesia and north of the Danube in Dacia, killing Canabaudes, the Gothic king, in battle. The peace agreement between Emperor Aurelian and the defeated Goths stipulated that Gothia would become a client kingdom of Rome, taking on the responsibility of defending the Danube on behalf of Rome. Roman troops were withdrawn from the region that was then organized as Gothia under Roman guidance. The southern regions of Trajan's Dacia, stretching from the eastern Banat, with the western part belonging to the Roman client kingdom of Iazyges, all the way to the Dniester, remained incorporated within the Roman provinces, Aurelian's Dacia or Moesia, later known as Scythia Minor. Far from being an exit of northern Dacia from the Roman system, and far from being a Roman leaving from Dacia, the Aurelian withdrawal of 271–73 is in fact a process of reconfiguring certain Roman provincial territories into becoming part of a new Roman client kingdom. The Roman Empire did not lose any land as a result of the Aurelian withdrawal. Instead, it gained the Gothic territories added to Trajan's Dacia, moved its troops from the Carpathians to the Danube, and secured new alliances. Aurelian not only avoided losing Roman territories, but on the contrary, he restored Roman rule both in the so-called Celtic Empire, an autonomous Roman Celtic structure in Gaul and Britain, and in the Palmyrene Empire, which he reconquered a year after subduing the Goths. Aurelian is hailed as the Restitutor Orbis, restorer of the world. During a span of 44 years, from 271 to 315, the Goths seized all plundering raids in the southern regions of the Danube. They upheld their status as Roman foederati far more effectively than the kingdom of Dacia did in the 1st century AD. After 315–316, during which the Goths and Carpi joined forces for plundering campaigns south of the Danube, Emperor Constantine the Great initiated punitive measures against them. Through a series of campaigns, he consolidated Roman rule in Oltenia, Muntenia, and southern Moldova. He also subdued the kingdom of the Iazyges, Sarmatia, and incorporated the southwestern part of Transylvania into Romania. Gothia was reaffirmed as a Roman client kingdom. In addition to implementing these administrative and military reorganizations, Emperor Constantine the Great not only restored Trajan's bridge, but also constructed a new bridge over the Danube. The construction of this bridge was essential due to the presence of the Wall of Constantine, also known as the Novak Furrow, which served as a defensive barrier extending from the Drobeta region to the north of Cetatea Albă, known as Tyras at that time. These defensive walls formed a complex socio-military and economic administrative system. Constructed by Roman citizens in military service, referred to as the popular militias, they were defended by the same armed Roman citizens. The villages, fossatum, in the vicinity of the defensive walls functioned not only as fortifications but also served as sources of troops, militias, for the area surrounding the earth and or stone walls. This system, which shared similarities with the Thracian, including Dacian, defensive systems, was not only military in nature, but also had socio-cultural and economic administrative dimensions. Taking into account that it was not just a single wall, but multiple ones, such as Alutanus, Transalutanus, which were either built or restored during the reign of Constantine the Great, we get a broader picture of the rich Roman life in Dacia during that time. Consequently, during the early decades of the 4th century AD, there is a strong and well-organized Roman presence north of the Danube. The war in 331-332 confirmed the Goths' status as Roman foederati. In fact, they became entangled in the succession struggles for the throne of Constantinople, offering support to Procopius in the 60s of the 4th century AD against Valens. Valens was eventually forced to come to Gothia to defeat his rival and his supporters. This leads us to the year 376 AD, when the Great Hunnic invasion occurred. Sneaking into small groups over several decades in the region of Dacia, Gothia, the Huns suddenly transitioned from a mere threat to destructive forces. After suffering a devastating defeat, the Goths, as Roman foederati, sought refuge in the southern regions of the Danube. For several decades, there were battles between the Romans in northern Danubian Dacia and the Huns. During the reign of Emperor Theodosius II, the Roman Empire lost most of its northern territories, retaining only the cities along the Danube. The wall of Constantine the Great and the Proto-Romanian population in the region came under Hunnic rule. However, this rule lasted for only about 10 years. To counter the Huns, the Romans forged a new alliance with the Gepids. With the support of the Romans, the Gepids rose up against the Huns, and in 454 the alliance achieved victory as the Hunnic Empire was completely destroyed. Weakened, the Roman Empire handed over the administration, including the defense, of the majority of Ptolemaic Dacia to the Gepids. However, it retained control over the river area along the Danube, with the cities and forts on the northern bank. However, Emperor Justinian, a Proto-Romanian from Macedonia, it is worth noting that the Slavs had not yet reached that region, followed in the footsteps of Constantine the Great and reconquered the territories that had been under the rule of Constantinople. The cities, forts, bridges, and the wall of Constantine the Great were restored. So, when did the Romans withdraw from Dacia? The historian Nicolae Iorga often discussed the concept of the eternal return of the empire to the north of the Danube. Indeed, this idea never faded away from the Constantinopolitan mindset, even when Romania became Greek-speaking. It remained ingrained in both thought and practice. The presence of the Danubian rulers in the confederate system of the Roman Empire during the 9th to 11th centuries serves as a clear and compelling evidence in this regard. One could argue that the retreat began around 602 AD with the occurrence of the Great Slavic Invasion, which brought Slavic populations as far south as present-day Greece. However, during this invasion, the Proto-Romanians allied themselves with the Slavs against the Greeks, who had seized control of Constantinople. Moreover, they already had their own distinct structures, which later evolved into the Romanian duchies, giving rise to the Danubian Romanian principalities. Linguistically speaking, the Romanian language, in its essential form, had already been established during that time. Otherwise, a Slavic language would be spoken today rather than Romanian. However, since a language cannot exist without its speakers, the Romanian language could not exist without the presence of Romanians. Therefore, the notion of a retreat of the Romans from Dacia does not exist as a historical event. There were administrative, military, economic and social changes occurring throughout Romania, both in line with broader trends and reflecting local characteristics. If the Romano-Slavic symbiosis of the 7th and 8th centuries is considered as a Roman retreat, it would mean disregarding the Roman and Romanian identity of the Romanians. It is worth noting in conclusion that the widely circulated notion of the millennium of silence is in fact a myth. In the worst-case scenario, if we ignore the Romanian presence in the Balkans and Carpathians alongside the Slavs in the 7th-8th centuries, well attested archaeologically and clearly documented, we would have at most a 2-century period of supposed silence. When did the Romans withdraw from Dacia? Never. Alongside the Thracians, Illyrians, Celts, and Scytho-Sarmatians, they formed the Romanian people, spanning from the Alps to the Caucasus and from north of the Carpathians to the Mediterranean Sea. They became the Romanians, with Romanian countries, direct successors of Romania, and for a long time an integral part of it, eventually becoming its successors even after the fall of Constantinople. With Romanian law resulting from the famous Codex Justinianus, the fundamental work of Roman law compiled by Emperor Justinian, a Proto-Romanian from Macedonia, with everything that fundamentally defines the Romanians and everything that fundamentally defines Romania.